With the lack of success with Battlefield 5 compared to the previous titles, we thought we'd take a look back at the history of all Battlefield games to see what exactly made the series great. So, let's travel back in time to the early 2000s to see what DICE had in store for us. First, let's start off with the game that started it all. The game that people still love till this day, Battlefield 1942. Back in the year 2000, DICE was working on games like the Swedish Tour Car Championship and NASCAR Heat, with no shooting game experience under their belt. Around the same time, Refraction Games had just launched Codename Eagle, a World War I action-adventure game that developed a cult-like following with their multiplayer gameplay. Behind the scenes at Refraction, they were also developing what eventually turned into Battlefield 1942. I guess the team at DICE liked what Refraction was doing and ended up purchasing them the same year. The merged teams developed a Refraction engine and finished off all development of Battlefield 1942 for launch in September 2002. With the Refraction engine, the team was able to do something that nobody else was doing at the time: large-scale environments and battles. The game enabled players to take the role of one of 5 classes, in addition to controlling numerous land, air, and sea vehicles. There was a single-player mode that was okay, but the multiplayer was where the game shined. The team gameplay was the key feature of the game, so much so that the visuals were sacrificed to put more focus on polishing the gameplay. Because of this focus, the gameplay was loved by so many people because each character gave a different playstyle from each other, like how the medic had to be played completely different compared to the assault class. This led to a massive success of the game, with the game going on to sell over 3.5 million copies across the main game and the 2 expansions. DICE went on to support the game with numerous patches while they worked on the sequel. Battlefield Vietnam was next in the series, changing things up from the first game. Since the game takes place in Vietnam, there was less focus on naval combat since the battles heavily consisted of guerrilla warfare. That means naval vehicles are out while air vehicles got improvements, including optimizing the helicopter physics to give you that realistic feel on the battlefield. They even crafted the playstyles between the 2 sides completely different to make the game feel as authentic as possible. The Americans were loud and had heavy use of explosives, while the Vietnamese focused on the guerrilla warfare with traps and infantry play. While this new adaptation didn't completely hold well with fans of the first game, it still went on to sell over 1 million copies in just 4 months. After that, the sales started to trickle until the following year. Why? Well, in 2005, you had the game that helped the series gain critical acclaim from pretty much everyone: Battlefield 2. However, the success of this title wasn't 100% because of DICE. In fact, the year prior, DICE had purchased Trauma Studios for a cool $500,000. The studio was responsible for creating the popular Desert Combat mod for Battlefield 1942, which in turn was used as the baseline for Battlefield 2. With an additional team working with them, they were able to update the new Refractor Engine 2, added Punkbuster, and even added a new game mode that gave fans something new and innovative to play called Commander Mode. These key improvements were pretty much only added because of the knowledge, expertise, and extra manpower that Trauma Studios brought with them. Unfortunately, DICE dissolved Trauma Studios before the launch of the game, with the developers going on to form Chaos Studios with THQ. The game had 3 expansion packs that were released, though that didn't make it over to their console port. Battlefield 2 Modern Combat released for the PS2, Xbox, and Xbox 360 the same year, though this version was a little bit more like a cousin to the PC version, with the single player being different and the multiplayer missing a lot of the features from the main game. I guess the purpose of this release was to introduce Battlefield to console players. With that said, both Battlefield 2 versions went on to sell almost 4 million copies combined, but maybe this success went to their head. The following year, in 2006, DICE launched the loved or hated game, Battlefield 2142. During the same year, EA purchased all of the remaining shares of DICE for $23 million after gaining majority share in the company the year prior. So, it's the first game released under EA's ownership. The game was set in the future, where you battle between 2 factions, the Pan-Asian Coalition and the European Union, fighting over the last remaining piece of unfrozen land. The main focus was on the multiplayer, though the result ended up being players having mixed feelings about the game. Many of the complaints were either because of balance issues or the fact that the game really didn't add anything new to the series. It was more like a jump from 1942 to Vietnam than 1942 to Battlefield 2. One of the bigger additions to the game was Titan mode. Here, players were tasked to destroy the opposing team's Titan, a heavily armored flying warship, while also defending theirs. Players had to fight over anti-missile silos to destroy the Titan's shields, then board it by catching a ride on assault pods and destroying the reactor core to win the match. It gets pretty intense, and if there's one thing that made the game stand out, it was definitely this mode. It did try to make a comeback in Battlefield 4 with the carrier assault game mode, but it didn't really have the same effect as it did here. Other than that, they added a bunch of new vehicles to fit the futuristic theme, had 13 maps in total, updated commander mode, ranked rewards, and so on. The game did sell a bunch of copies, though most people do agree that the game is a glorified, overly priced mod. However, everything changed in 2008 with the release of Battlefield Bad Company. Here, DICE completely ditched the refactor engine for the newly developed Frostbite engine. This was a major stepping stone for the company as it allowed them to introduce a feature that has been a staple to all Battlefield games till this day: destruction. While you could only make holes in walls and deform the land just a little bit, it was still pretty innovative and changed the way that the game was played. Another first for this game is that it was developed from the ground up to be a console exclusive, hence why Bad Company still isn't on PCs. The game featured a very fleshed out storyline with characters that actually had personality, and this, among other things, is what made Bad Company stand out from the rest of the pack. While playing through the story, you actually grew an attachment to each character and their varied personalities. I mean, look at Haggard.
Hi, Mom. This is your favorite, whatever I am, to you.
The multiplayer was addictive as well, keeping the destruction of buildings in the large-scale battles instead of dumbing it down and outright removing it to keep performance up. They also removed jets, but it wasn't a big issue as the helicopters provided more than enough fun and strategy to the battle. The game initially launched with just one mode, Gold Rush, but then later on added the highly requested Conquest mode along with updated maps to fit the new game mode. The game was a success and went on to sell 2.5 million copies, but DICE still had two other projects in the works behind the scenes. The first was Battlefield Heroes, EA's first title under their new Play for Free initiative. With this title, the game was available free of charge but generated revenue from advertisements on the website, the front end of the game, and also from in-game purchases. The goal was to bring in more people to the Battlefield experience by giving it a lower barrier of entry with its low PC spec requirement and giving it a more cartoonish look to attract a younger crowd. To also keep things simple, the gameplay featured a modified version of Conquest mode, a reduction down to 3 basic classes, Soldier, Gunner, and Commando, and purchasable health and armor repair kits. You could also customize your characters with multiple skins and crossovers implemented into the game. Because it wasn't part of the main Battlefield lineage, they had more leeway with what they could do with the title. So they went a little crazy with it, lasting for a whole 6 years. Unfortunately, many players were unhappy about the microtransaction updates that pretty much forced players to do one of 3 things. Either spend a crap ton of time grinding so you can actually afford the new items, open your wallet and spend your precious cash, or just quit the game entirely. For many, the changes took the fun out of the game and they ended up leaving. After its closure though, some fans really wanted to play the game, so a team of die-hard fans created Revive Heroes, which was really popular for 3 years until EA hit them with a cease and desist. There is another revival that is still active till this day, however, called Rising Star, where you can go ahead and continue to enjoy that Battlefield Heroes experience. That same year, actually less than 2 years after Battlefield Heroes launched, consoles got their own little arcade title called Battlefield 1943. This one wasn't free, however. Instead, it was priced around $15, which was a nice low barrier to entry to pick up for some new players. With this title, you're back in World War II, fighting in the Pacific Ocean Theater. It featured 24-player conquest matches on 3 different maps, with an additional map becoming unlocked after players collectively reached 43 million kills. The game runs on the Frostbite engine, compared to Battlefield Heroes running on the Refractor engine, meaning that the destruction is alive and well with these island maps. Similar to Heroes, there are only 3 classes available to play with: Infantryman, Rifleman, and Scout, with each class having regenerating health and an unlimited amount of ammunition, but all explosives take a bit of time to replenish. The game received high praise even though it was a very stripped down version of the Battlefield experience. It went on to sell over 3.5 million copies while completely shattering the day 1 and first week sales for a download only Xbox Live title. There was going to be a PC port of the title, but ultimately that was scrapped so the team could work on another big title behind the scenes. In March of 2010, we were presented with a game that solidified DICE's success in both the PC and console market. Battlefield Bad Company 2 improved on the first in many ways and became one of the best Battlefield games released to date. Don't believe me? Well, just check out any forum post or YouTube video discussing the best Battlefield game. Battlefield 2 is always in the top 3. The game is using the updated Frostbite 1.5 engine, bringing improved destruction, allowing players to fully demolish most of the structures in the game. The multiplayer included 15 vehicles with a new addition such as the UH-60 Blackhawk, a quad bike, and patrol boats. Compared to the first Bad Company, this iteration comes with 5 game modes compared to just 2 in the first game. Modes like the always popular Conquest, Battlefield 2's fan favorite, Rush, and 3 new modes, Onslaught, Squad Rush, and Squad Deathmatch. The new modes were a nice addition, but they didn't really gain any traction, except for maybe Squad Deathmatch, because there's always those people who care about the kills more than they do actually playing the objective. But why was the game so good? Well, the reasons vary. Some love to outshoot a sniper with just a 870 or a Spaz 12 shotgun equipped with slug rounds, how you could use destroyed vehicles as cover during a firefight and move closer to the objective, or even how there were no vehicle lock-ons, making it so that you need to actually hit the helicopter with an RPG or tag it with a laser designator. There are a lot more reasons, but we'll let you check the numerous forum posts out there. Anyways, after being a console exclusive for the first title, DICE went back to its roots and launched this title on the PC as well, receiving much praise from its PC fans. The title went on to sell over 12 million copies 2 years after its release, making it one of the best-selling titles at that time. However, they could still add a bit more to the game, and well, they did. In December, DICE released the Battlefield Bad Company 2 Vietnam expansion pack to great fanfare. I'm not going to go deep into detail since it's just an expansion pack, so this section will be very short. The expansion included 5 new maps, 6 vehicles, 15 new weapons, and music specifically licensed from the Vietnam era were included. It wasn't a huge game like Battlefield Vietnam was, but for $15 it had a ton of content and huge replayability that I think fans love more than the first game ever did. We couldn't find any specific sales numbers for this game, but from how much people actually commented about the game, you can tell it was really high. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the history of Battlefield, and this video can go on for ages. So we'll stop here and call it the end of part 1. We'll be releasing the second half of this soon, so make sure that you're subscribed with the little bell notification checked so you're always notified when we post new content. This is a big one, and we hope that you stick with us for the ride. Until next time, see ya.